with you from One Chiropractic, and we're on this neurologically based chiropractic series. And this is our third session with Dr. Dan Sullivan. And last session, man, he just really dumped on us the whole visual aid of really what's happening with the subluxation and the adjustment. And we shared a lot about the mindset and how we're communicating with patients. And he teased us a little bit, and he told us he was going to dump something on us that was really going to hopefully rock our world and change the way that we actually start communicating and adopting this mindset. So Dr. Sullivan, I can't wait to hear what you got for us.
Yeah, let me, I'm just going to jump right on my screen here because I think that we're going to go to school here a little bit on this one.
Good.
And let me make sure you can see my screen and that, is that covering the whole screen now?
Yep.
Okay, cool. So I love this term. You've heard it, but everybody's kind of heard this before, this neurospinal organ. I think this does change, you know, even in your own mind as a chiropractor. I want you first to, like, and I'm going to back this up with what I'm talking about. When you think about the spine, like what we used to think about the spine, and actually this gives me a huge talking point. If I'm going into a group of researchers, a group of scientists, a group of chiropractors, a group of chiropractic students, or a group of patients, like it's the same thing. And here's what I talk about is that, see, really a lot of us have been taught, even in school, even at the doctorate level, that the spine is essentially a hard casing that surrounds and supports the spinal cord and the nerves, and that it holds us up straight, gives us good posture, and that it's there to support, and all those are true. But the part that we don't talk about, or that we don't get taught very clear, is the fact that the spine is such a neurological influencer that it's never gotten the credit that it's deserved. And what I mean by this, and I guess I'll start with saying, if you start to understand this and this simple concept that the influence the spine has on the central nervous system, it starts to make it very clear why we've seen the results we have for 125 years. But also, as you said, Bharon, it's not clockwork. There's some people that came in and to your office and they couldn't get pregnant, and you've adjusted them. Next thing you know, they got pregnant. And then there's also been, I've had many women that kind of came in under the, like, I've heard that you could get, results with people of fertility, and they didn't. So we don't have this clockwork thing that happens all the time. But what we do know is that if the spine is influencing the central nervous system, that happens every time, regardless of the symptom or the change that they're seeing. And that's what I want you to know you can hang your hat on. So where does this come from? The spine is a neurospinal organ. It's not just a hard set of bones. It surrounds soft neural tissue. And so I look at that, and you look at, I'm going to go through this briefly because I don't want to spend a lot of time and get too kind of geeky out on you, because I can. But basically we know this, is that there's evidence to support these mechanoreceptors, these neurological receptors are sending feedback every millisecond into your brain and into every person you ever meet's brain via feedback from the spine due to the mechanism of movement and alignment. And one of the things that these tiny little muscle spindles and mechanoreceptors, one of the things that the main thing that they respond to is distortion. So like any distortion of this neuron is going to send what we call aberrant input. I know Dr. Bharon would have hammered this on a previous one, right? This aberrant input. Well, the reason why this matters, and I'll make it really simple for you, the reason why this matters is that the reason why you're getting results with things seemingly unrelated to the spine is because of this connection. It's not just because you're taking a hard bone off a soft nerve. That is not the reason why the majority benefits are occurring in your office. So it happens to go back to this neurospinal organ. Approximately 80% of baseline activities of the central nervous system is due to mechanoreceptive input. So we know, and these central midline, what they call midline mechanoreceptors, are the main drivers of this, which happens to be the ones that are in and around the spine. So let me give you one more geeky thing before I get to the fun part. And that is, so they did a study in 2001 showing the amount of muscle spindles, which is a mechanoreceptive neuron that's sending input into the brain, how many of them are in different parts of the body in muscles. So they took 1 gram of tissue out of different areas of the body, and they measured how many muscle spindles particularly were in 1 gram in different areas of the body. Well, look at the numbers. The latissimus dorsi had 1.4 muscle spindles per gram of tissue. The trapezius muscle right here, right, 2.2. And then you look at the inferior oblique and those other 4 that I have listed there, but the inferior superior oblique, guess where those muscles attach to? Tiny little sensory muscles that attach from the base of the skull to the upper cervical spine, C1, C2, and they have a load of muscle spindles. And so to me, when I look at this and first came across this, I'm like, immediately, I was like, This is why B.J. Palmer had such an amazing influence with the upper cervical spine, literally adjusting one bone. It wasn't because he was taking so much pressure off the spinal cord, which I do believe now some of the evidence does support that, but I also say this is something we can clearly hang our hat on. We know this is happening. And it's like, it's undeniable. So that said, right, that these, and again, you know, they're mostly loaded upper cervical spine. They're really loaded in the pelvis and the lumbar spine, and then throughout the spine is even the thoracic. But the more they're there, it's not a trick question. The more neurology you have in an area, is it going to influence the brain more or less? Right? It's not a hard question. Yeah. So here's the kicker, and this is where I want to. I'll kind of let you talk here, have questions. But this is the thing, and my point of doing any of this is because on the last session, if you didn't watch it, go back and watch it. I talked about, and actually, Bharon, you mentioned, like, everybody thinks we do backs. Well, we do backs, and I'm actually going to argue that it's not a bad thing that we do backs or that they think we do backs. Here's the issue. The issue is that majority of human beings, including, unfortunately, most chiropractors and healthcare providers, rather, and a lot of chiropractors, still don't understand the magnitude that our backs have on our life.
That's right.
And so let me give you an example. It looks like a weird slide, and it kind of is, but the point is this. If you were a cardiologist and the current understanding of a heart muscle was that of a bicep muscle. So you see a bicep muscle there, you see a heart muscle there. Heart is a muscle, bicep is a muscle. If the current cultural understanding was that my heart muscle was similar to my bicep muscle in what it does and its importance, then when you went into the cardiologist and they found a problem with the heart muscle and they want to literally cut your chest open, pull the heart muscle out and do something with it, it would be really weird if you thought the heart muscle was just like the bicep muscle, because if you understand the bicep muscle, you could live without it. If anything, you could live without it. It wouldn't be ideal, but you could live without it. But see, what we know about the heart muscle, and you guys are saying, where am I going with this? You see where I'm going is, what we know about the heart muscle is, without a functioning, good, healthy heart muscle, you don't supply the oxygen to the body that's a requirement to every cell and tissue of the body. And the heart, that muscle, is a pump to make sure that does that appropriately. So if you have a problem with that, you have a problem with life itself, because those tissues are all. So you see where I'm going? Here's what I'm telling you. The majority of patients coming into your office, their reference point for what the spine does in their life is that it stands them up straight, it holds them up, it keeps them good posture, and at worst, it hurts, and it's a nuisance when it hurts. And they want you to give them a couple cracks because their Uncle Bob got some results with chiropractic. So do you see how we have to change the frame for them? Because now if they understand what I just went through with you, the spine is intimately connected to the central nervous system. The spine, the way it exists in gravity, the way it moves and the way it's aligned, is directly influenced the function of their body through the central nervous system and autonomic system. Once they can grasp that or begin to grasp that, they start to see, then your adjustment may be more importantly than I thought. And I'm going to tell you this right now, Doc, they're not getting it unless you get it. And that's the thing that I can say based on the results that I've gotten throughout my life and practices and that sort of thing is, I get so fired up about this that they can't help but think, I don't know, this guy's office rocker, but there must be something to it, and they follow that. So I want you to have a depth of understanding and then a reference point for where they're coming in, because there's got to be a kind of come to Jesus moment for them to say, I know you thought your back was just about a bad back or something that hurt you. Your spine is like your heart. It is so directly connected to the health, not only current health and your autonomic health, but your future health and what your health is going to look like in 5, 10, 15, 20 years from now. So there's a little throw up on you there, buddy.
No, that's awesome, dude. I love that. And there's so many like different places my brain went when you were talking about that. And one of them that I think is important that I want to pull out of this is that, I've always wondered in chiropractic, there's so many techniques, right? There's so, and I've been adjusted by just about all of them. Some of them I'll never have again, just because it's not my cup of tea. But the one thing I've always known is all these people have practices and people keep coming back and people keep saying that they're getting better. So as crazy as it looks to me and whatever tonal or energy, I've seen it all. One of the things that always was so fascinating to me was upper cervical. And I've been fascinated with things like NUCA, AO, different types of upper cervical adjustments. And when you listed that slide with the different receptors in the muscle fibers, that makes total sense to me now, why the brainstem and why a cervical adjustment is absolutely so powerful in what's going on. And I think we have to stop judging techniques by what we know to be true from our training, and just get back to trusting that we're influencing. And here's the other thing that you said, and I'm not making much sense here either, because I'm just absorbing everything you said, but I used to, before this second, I used to look at the spine as literally bone, right? Because we always look at the vertebra, right? You have the spinous process, you have all that stuff, and they're just bones, right? We knew there were discs in the middle, and we knew that there were ligaments holding it all together. But I never viewed the spine itself as an organ the way you just described it, understanding that those muscles are not just there for the purpose of holding the bones together, that they're actually intimately involved with the brain and making sure the brain knows. And you made that comment that it's actually about the alteration, that they're there to measure if there's any instability or anything to alert the brain. And this is something Dr. Barwell said that I'll never forget, is the brain knows one thing: stay alive. The brain, that's it. It'll sacrifice almost any part of the body if it has to for it to stay alive, which is why we have certain responses when we get cut and different things like that. The brain says, no, I'm not going to let that end my life. I'm going to stay alive. So the brain's constantly wanting information about the body to keep itself alive. And so now with what you just said, if the spinal column is created and the muscles and all the sensories are there for the brain to know, hey, we've got some instability down at that section, the brain says, that's not going to happen, and I'm going to respond to it. It makes even more sense that when we're stimulating that through the adjustments, to a proper and specific adjustment, it's communicating and it's putting that proper sensory input back to the brain, which now makes total sense to me why it affects the things that it affects. So, dude, you were right. That just blew my mind, of thinking about the spine not as a bonus thing or a bony thing for posture, but it's its own organ that has such a big role to play in communicating to the brain and how the brain affects the rest of the body throughout it. That's just awesome stuff.
Man, I got to tell you that I was sitting in a classroom with Dan Murphy. This is probably, however many years ago, 10 years ago. And I remember having this concept that what you just said about technique, and I use this, you go into, and this baffled me. And I knew getting into this that I'm like, I have to answer this. I knew the technique I have, but I can go into all these different offices. You got an activator office, a torque release office, a tonal office. You got a guy over here doing CDP, a guy over here doing very, very manual Gonstead, guy that's just adjusting one bone in the upper, like they all, and you look at their testimonies, allergies, asthmas, diabetes, no more immune system, bronchitis is gone, all of it. And you're like, what? Because as a logical thinker, I'm not the sharpest guy in the world, but I'm logical. I'm like, what is the common ingredient that and this is what has led me to this, is that the one ingredient that every technique has, regardless of what, is movement, is improving movement. And I have to actually concede then, is like, because I've had the guy, you guys have all had this guy, the big old, 350-pound truck driver. He comes in and he's got back pain. And he literally, I'm going to tell you, this has happened multiple times. He comes in, he got the back, and I adjust him. And I'm a manual guy, adjust him. I had a corrective care technique. And I adjust him. And like, in my mind, like nothing moved the way I thought would move. There wasn't a lot of DJs, so like, I'm going to be able to, handle this. And nothing moved in my, and I literally, you think, and he comes back the next day. And I thought, I just they're not feeling anything. And sure enough, comes back the next day. He's like, Doc, I don't know what you did to me, but can you do it again? I had this one guy, he's like, he goes, I slept better than I have slept in I don't know when. He goes, the other thing is, I hate to tell you this, but it was a Tuesday night. I remember it because he goes, I go have Mexican food on Tuesday night and I get nasty heartburn every time. And for some reason, I did not get any heartburn last night. And when I got done with your adjustment, and my nose just started draining. Like, so you start to say, and by the way, he's like, yeah, I'm feeling a little bit more, but I'm like, I didn't do anything. I didn't feel like I did the thing that, and the point is, what did we do? If we're measured by taking hard bones off soft nerve, none of that makes sense. Right. Now I know why that makes sense. It's because of the intimacy. And by the way, to your point, it's in these muscles. Where else are the mechanoreceptors? They're in the facet joints. They're in the discs. They're in the tiny little muscles. They're all around the spinal segment. So why we've gotten results, some of that, in this way you've done such a good job, Bharon, is we have to look for what it is, adopt and ratify some new understanding so that we can take this message and because now it explains why we've seen what we've seen. And then we as chiropractors understand it. Now we can communicate it, saying your spine you thought was this, it's this, therefore your neglect up to this point is the reason why you've gotten here, and we need to actually help you and show you how to do that. So I want to go on the next one. I got something else special too. Is like, again, how to communicate this. Part of the problem that they're coming in with is they've neglected it. And so I want to tell you and kind of share with you a couple of things I feel like you could do to help communicate and bridge that gap.
That's awesome. Well, that's awesome. And I'm going to end this one with this thought, because this just hit me when you were saying that. I've had an affinity to doctors that have been in practice for 40, 50 years. I just love them. They've been through so much. They've seen such a transition in our profession. They remember, the guys that taught them in school were the heroes. We talk about Gonstead and, all those guys, they learned from those people, and a lot of them knew BJ and was still around. And one thing that I've learned from them that I love that I want to pass on to you now, and hopefully with what Dr. Sullivan's been sharing with us, it gives you some foundation to put what I'm about to say on. And that is that this old guard, all they said is, we don't know why, but I believe every time I put my hands on a patient, it was going to do something powerful to him. He goes, even if I didn't think it was a delivery and adjustment, I just knew. I went in with the intent and the emotional and mental capacity of knowing this person's better adjusted than not. He goes, I didn't have all the technology and all the research that you guys have today, but I knew that when I delivered an adjustment, something amazing was going to happen. And they said, and it did. And I believe in large part that confidence and that belief system of knowing, I don't know why, but I know it's going to help, was a big part of the effect that they had on their patients. And that's what I want this series to do for you. I want you to get back to just believing. Now we have some tangible evidence that supports why what you're doing has the effect, but it still requires you to go into that adjustment just believing. For that 350-pound guy, don't wait to hear that great audible. Yep, that one went. Don't buy into all that stuff. Believe that even with someone, a big muscle builder that's got super taut and there's spasm to the hilt, that movement and those receptors are going to respond to that, and something amazing is going to happen in that body. Look at that chart Dr. Sullivan put up and know all of that stuff happens when you impact that sensory input. So I want you to fall back in love. Go into your adjustments today. After watching this video, go in today and believe you're doing something miraculous in the body of the people that you are able to touch, because it's incredible what God has given us in chiropractic, and it's incredible that you get to be a part of it. And I hope this series gives you confidence and you just go out and you rock your community with truth. But we love and we appreciate you. We'll be back next time with Dr. Sullivan. So until then, keep telling the story, keep rocking it, and share this series with somebody else, because we're changing the world through this thought process. We love and appreciate you. God bless.